And let's start discussing about the biomedical waste guidelines with the amended rules in 2018. And thereafter, what are the amendments that have taken place? The minor amendments due to the COVID times, the pandemic times. So, we all know that the biomedical waste rules, it basically applies to wherever the waste has been generated, and these areas are the hospitals, the nursing homes, the clinics, dispensaries, it's HWCs, the health and wellness centers, the veterinary houses, any research institutes, and of course more important is the pathological laboratories, irrespective of the size, even if it's a small lab or it's a reference lab. Also to the blood banks. It also refers to the areas wherever we are conducting camps, whether it's a blood donation camp or it's a testing camp, which generally is being conducted by most of the laboratories. So wherever it is being generated, it needs to be collected, it needs to be received at a certain area. We need to store it and transport it, or if need be, we need to treat it at the site, the disposal by the common waste biomedical waste facilities, or it has to be handed over to the common biomedical waste places. Okay, so before we start again, can I request you all to please mute yourselves? Thank you.
नहीं वैसे कर दी आते देखेंगे ना मैं आ जाऊँ
Am I audible? Thank you. Before we go ahead, just let me tell you that how the entire history of biomedical waste has taken place. The rule started in 1998, wherein biomedical waste segregation was introduced, and the gloves also had to be disinfected before it is being used. Now, a lot of changes thereafter have taken place. And the rules in 2016 mentioned, of course, we have a gazetted notification for that, wherein the shops, a very specific category for shops was introduced. Okay, and all these shops, they were divided into two parts. Either it would have been discarded in a cardboard, where metallic would be discarded in cardboard, and the plastic boxes or the glass and the glass would be discarded in the plastic boxes. So it was very essential that you need to identify it into two separate categories, and these were also labeled with a particular color, and these metallic implants were in the blue shops container, and the glass was also into the plastic boxes with a blue. Okay, liquid disinfection was introduced with 10% of chloride, hypochlorite at that time. Then an amendment took place, which was in 2018, with a gazetted notification, which phased off all the chlorinated biomedical waste liners by the end of the financial year. In 2019, we had some changes to the biomedical waste guidelines of 2018, wherein the sharp containers had to be puncture-proof, leak-proof, and tamper-proof. And the reason was that when they said that you need to have a puncture-proof container, there were a lot of people who started using very thin-lined plastic containers, and there were incidences of a lot of needle stick injuries for the biomedical waste aggregators due to these thin lined plastic containers. So then they had to say that it should be a puncture proof container, and the liquid disinfection was reduced from 10% to 1% hypochlorite. In 2020, with the pandemic, the COVID biomedical waste guidelines 2022 were introduced, and there were 4 revisions that took place. The first was in March 2020, and the last was in July 2020. Here, all the biomedical waste segregation and discard, because it was initially said that all the biomedical waste of COVID patients need to be generated in disposed in the yellow, but it was found that we had huge quantities, because each and every, the linen, the tissues, everything that was being used were discarded. Because of the extremely high quantity, then later on it was withdrawn, and the July 2022 mentioned that only those wherein it has been infected shall be discarded. Now, the rules in 2021 talked about more on the immunization guidelines, and still says that you need to have the immunization for all your employees who are there in the organizations, especially the people who are handling the biomedical waste. So, and it also said that all the wrappers of the BMW products that are unused on patients can be discarded in the blue general waste bins. The one more notification which is still not a gazetted notification was a discussion on the hub cutters. They can be reused after disinfection with 1% hypochlorite. Now there would be a question that how frequently do you do it? There are two things that can be considered over here. Number one, if you are going to use the hub cutter till two-thirds of the storage of that container, then you can, once it is discarded, you can clean it with 1% hypo, or alternatively, you can do it on a daily basis. But not more than two-thirds of the container should be filled. So why the biomedical waste rules were actually introduced? Because it was found that a lot of infectious materials were being dumped. uh, the spread of the infectious disease, which also included tuberculosis, the triple H and all, it was a potential hazard to the environment as well to human beings. It was also found that a lot of such garbage which was being dumped was being used by was being eaten by the livestock, and it was also causing a spread of these diseases across the country. So the BMW rules were introduced. Excuse me. Now, the biomedical rules, they basically comprise of 18 rules. It has 4 schedules and 5 forms. We all need to understand that what is the importance of each of these 4 schedules, and what are these 5 forms which need to be filled up and submitted by each and every organization, with, be it laboratory or a hospital or whatever, the ones which we have discussed earlier. So the first schedule said that the biomedical waste color coding, collection, treatment, and disposal. The second schedule talked on the standard for treatment and disposal. The third schedule talked on the prescribed authorities and responsibilities of people of the authorities who are going to manage the biomedical waste, and the responsibilities of each and every personnel in an organization as well as at the common biomedical waste treatment facility. And the schedule fourth talked on the labels for the biomedical waste containers and the bags. Now, the 5 forms that we were talking about, the first form was on accident reporting. If there is any accident or an incident which takes place during either the segregation, treatment, or discard of the biomedical waste, the accident form needs to be filled up and uploaded. The second was application and authorization document. These the documents were basically on applying to the common biomedical waste treatment facility as well as to the pollution control board. Form 4, that was on annual report. Annual report needs to be generated by each and every such organization which has the authority which has been provided by the common biomedical waste treatment facility as well as the pollution control board. And this is generally generated at the end of the year, and not the financial year but the calendar year. The annual report submitted to the SPCB or to the CPBB, that means the common biomedical waste facilities, and any appeal. So they were these 5 forms which were introduced. Now let us talk about the commonly used terms in biomedical waste. So there are 2 things, that is, one is the occupier and second is the operator. The occupier means a person who has administrative control over the institution. That means the head of the organization. Okay, so if it's a laboratory, the laboratory director. If it's a hospital or maybe a nursing home, then the head of the organizations, maybe the medical director or the managing director. So whoever was, it's irrespective of what kind of a system of medicine it is. Okay, even an Ayush needs to have biomedical waste. So irrespective of whoever is there, the main person of the organization, the responsible person, shall be termed as the occupier over here, and the operator is the organization which is the common biomedical waste treatment facility. That means whoever is controlling the biomedical waste treatment at that particular place. So the abbreviation for this, the you can say short form for it is the CBMWTF. Okay, which we also call as common biomedical waste treatment facility. So the responsibility of these people was for the collection, reception, storage, transport, treatment, and disposal. Now, these common biomedical waste treatment facilities also give guidelines to the occupier on how the segregation and storage at the place of generation should be. The key functions or the authorization of all the responsible peoples in an of the occupier was that irrespective of the quantity, it has to make an application in the form of Form 2. We have discussed about the forms. So the Form 2 has to be sent across to the prescribed authority, that is the State Pollution Control Board. So each state has got a different pollution control board. So like Maharashtra has got a State Pollution Control Board. I need to send a request to the in the form in a prescribed Form 2 for grant of authorization that we can have these biomedical waste generated at our place, segregated and stored, and send it across to the common biomedical waste treatment facility. And the prescribed authority shall grant the authorization in the form of Form 3, okay, with a validity. So you will have a consent and a validity that for how long you can have a connect with the common biomedical waste treatment facility, and when it needs to be renewed. Okay, so for a non-bedded healthcare facility, it is a one-time authorization. So you need to understand that hospitals need to have this done regularly, whereas laboratories can have a one-time authorization depending upon what does the State Pollution Control Board say. So each State Pollution Control Board may have their own systems in place, and only once you get confirmation from them, you can get it done. So you need to put an application in the form of Form 2, and they would be giving you an authorization in the form of Form 3. Now, what happens is the occupier, as we mentioned, the occupier or the operator will make an application. The State Pollution Control Board will grant the authorization in the term of Form 3. So these are the basic key features of a biomedical waste authorization. Now, the process flow charts for biomedical waste is wherein first it's generation. Generation is at the source of the occupier. Okay. The segregation is also done at, excuse me. Sorry. The segregation is done at source. Now, what do you mean by at source? There are many people who generally get confused about the terminology at source. At source means whenever and wherever it has been generated. So it should not happen that you collect all your syringes, okay, and then there is, or you dump it into a waste bag, and then you have your housekeeping staff who is actually going and removing and putting it into an organized bin. Okay, so wherever you are going to have it, the generation point only you need to segregate it. So this is very important, and most of the times we see that the non-conformances take place only at these points, where at the point of the generation only the segregation is not being done. So once the generation and segregation is done, then you need to have a storage. Now, whenever you're doing a storage, it is very important that you should not fill the biomedical waste bins for more than 2/3 of the capacity of that particular bags, okay, or that bin. Second thing, it has to be stored for not more than 48 hours. So this is one more important point. And third, it has to be stored in an area away from where you can have pests or infestation of any of the rodents. Okay, because there is a high chance that these pests or rodents may cut through that, and the biomedical waste may be exposed to the outside world. Once it is stored in a right area, you identify with your common biomedical waste treatment facility. They do the collection. This collection has to be done within 48 hours, and transportation is done in closed vans of the common biomedical waste treatment facility, wherein the treatment and disposal is done at those sites which the biomedical waste treatment facility has. uh, each and every laboratory or hospital needs to do at least once a year audit of these common biomedical waste treatment facility, right from where it has been collected to when it is being discarded, to see whether whatever the material which has gone from their end, whether it is being discarded in an appropriate manner or not. So this is very important, and each one of you all should note on this. Now, we all know that we generate tons and tons of waste in each organization that we have. Out of this, which generally around 75 to 85%, or we generally say around 80% of the waste is non-infectious. So we may have papers, we may have food, we may have drinking water, means a lot of things which are waste, and these can be dumped into either the black bag, or it is being drained through the water or the sewage. There are infectious waste which are approximately say 7.5 to 10%. We generally say 10 to 15%. And then we have the hazardous waste. Now there's a difference between infectious and hazardous waste. So you need to understand that which one of it is actually the hazardous waste, which can cause an impact to the environment. Infectious waste which can be treated at the source only and then discarded or disposed of. Now, since you remember that the chlorinated bags were phased off and the non-chlorinated bags have come in, so the waste were discarded into either two types. One was the general waste, which used to go into the black bag, and the second is the biomedical waste, which has into plastic. That is, I'll tell you about it: plastic, non-plastic, sharp, and puncher proof. So this term plastic is to make a term understand easier. Okay, so anything which is plastic or looks like plastic should be dumped into a red bag. So whether it's the tubes, whether it is the syringes, whether it is the IV fluid, this thing, or it is any of the bags which is there except for the blood bag, they all need to be dumped into the red bag. The non-plastic, wherever rather than non-plastic, we say wherever there is an exposure to the body fluid, even a drop of the body fluid, anything which has that, or the tissues need to be discarded into the yellow bag. Anything which has sharps, which can hurt, which can pierce through, okay, like for example glass or any metallic implants, or that need to be dumped into the blue bags or blue containers. And the last is the puncher proof container. Now the needles, the scalpels, the even you can say for glucometer, we have those small needles, the punchers, that also needs to be discarded into the puncher proof containers. Now what goes into a red bag? The disposable contaminated waste, which can be recycled by autoclaving, okay, or it can be followed by shredding. So you can reuse all these things. These go into the red bag. So what are these the things? They are the tubings, they're the bottles, the IV tubes, the catheters, the urine bags, syringes without needles, okay, and vacuolators with the needles cut and gloves. So all these things can be dumped into the red bag. What goes into a yellow bag? The anatomical waste, the body parts or tissues. Okay, so people who are doing the histopathology, they need to note about this. The cotton dressings, plasters, the cast, gauze pieces, antibiotics. Important for your microbiology waste. All the microbiology waste goes into the yellow bag. The culture devices, the stocks, specimens of microorganisms, they all go into the yellow bag. And apart from this, the discard linens, the mattress, the dressing soiled with blood or body fluids, mask and gown. Why mask and gown is important? In case if there is a spillage, okay, and you are doing, if you have announced a code and a body fluid spillage takes place, the housekeeping staff who is wearing the mask and gown, this also will be dumped into the yellow bag. What goes into the blue bag? The puncture proof or the leak proof container. Okay, so here you have the glassware which are broken, contaminated glass, medical vials or ampules. All of them go into the blue bags. So there are many of the laboratories which still have reagents, which are reagents, or for that matter, even the controls and the calibrators which can come in glass bottles. So these all need to be dumped into the blue bag. What goes into the white puncture proof container? Sharps including metals, okay, needle, syringes with fixed needles. So remember we told that syringes need to be dumped into the red bag, but syringes with fixed needles cannot be dumped into the red bag. They need to be dumped into the puncture proof container. Scalpels, blade, lancets, the suture needles and the aluminum foil, any contaminated sharp objects that can cause punctures or cuts. And it needs to be handed. If you remember, I initially told you that how much can you fill even the hub cutter. Okay, so I had mentioned to you that when it's two-third full, you need to hand it over to the waste agency. In case it can be cleaned, then you need to clean it with a 1% hypo and use it. Chemical liquid waste, it either needs to be treated with 1% hypochlorite or you need to have an ETP, the effluent treatment plant. Now, it is mandatory at certain places to have an ETP, and this ETP needs to be kept outside your laboratory or in case of a hospital, according to the waste guidelines of that state. You either need to have a ETP or an STP. So it depends on which state do you belong. You can actually go to the website of that state pollution control board, and they give you the guidelines whether an ETP STP is required. Alternatively, you need to treat it with 1% hypo. Now, source pre-treatment can be done by an autoclave. So the prerequisites for this is you need to have an autoclave, which should be either graphic or computer recording devices. Graphic in sense that you can see what is the temperature, what is the pressure, and what is the time. Okay, or there is a computer recorded, that means whatever how is the these are the you can say um, autoclaves which has a linked printer, and in this printer with each and every minute or each and every 5 to 7 minutes it gives you a recording and a printout on what is the temperature and the pressure at that time. So it records the date, the time of the day, the load, identification number, and operating parameters to the entire cycle of the autoclave. Now, all the records for this have to be kept for a minimum of 5 years. Now, the validation of the autoclave needs to be done whenever you are going to discard it. And you need to use the 4 biological strip indicators. One is used as a control and it is left at room temperature. 3 will be placed in approximate centers of each of the containers which are there. And what is going to be the frequency? This needs to be conducted at least 3 consecutive times to define the minimum operating condition. That is the temperature, the pressure, and the residence time. So these 3 need to be known. And then you need to do a follow-up action every 3 months and maintain the records for it. So you need to use this. That is the biological strip indicator. Now, going ahead, moving further, we'll talk on the standards for the autoclaving of the biomedical waste. So that what we call as pre-treatment at source. the something which is done at the common biomedical waste facility is different. What we are doing it at our place is the pre-treatment. Now, this pre-treatment is important, especially when you are going to discard the microbiology samples, okay, or in case if you are discarding blood bags. So you need to autoclave this. Now, what would be the requirement for autoclaving? The temperature has to be 121 degree. You need to have a pressure of 15 pounds, and you need to have a residence time of at least 20 minutes. Okay, so residence time means it takes into consideration, or for that matter, you say it is 45 minutes or 1 hour, because it takes time for the pressure to build up and the temperature to reach 121. At the 121 temperature and the pressure of 15 pounds, you need to have it for at least 20 minutes, and then time for cooling it down. So just remember that whenever you are doing it, don't take 20 minutes as a total time. Now, we also need to have a chemical strip indicator which should be placed in order to note whether you have achieved the temperature and pressure or not. So these are available. You get these strips readily available in the market. The frequency to use should be more than one strip with each bag or with each batch, and you need to record the same. Spore testing, that is the biological indicator, should be done at least once in a week. The duties of the occupier. Now you remember there are two things, the operators and the occupiers. Okay, so occupiers will have the healthcare facility, that means the handle waste as per the norms. They will have arrangement of safe storage of the waste, which I told you that it has to be in an area which is secured from the rodents and the pest. You need to follow the on-site pre-treatment of infective waste wherever it is, especially the microbiology waste. So you need to have it pre-treated. Replace the chlorinated bags, gloves, and bags with the non-chlorinated ones. Dispose of the solid waste separated from the biomedical waste, other than the biomedical waste, in accordance. Provide training. This is a very important part. We need to provide training to all the healthcare workers at the time of induction, and thereafter at least once in a year. You need to have these records, and these records also need to be presented when you're submitting your form 4. And the number of personals undergone any training, it needs to be provided in your annual report, that is form 4. Immunization of all the healthcare workers against hepatitis B and tetanus as per the protocol. You need to establish a barcode system for the bags or the containers, including the which contain the biomedical waste. And you need to ensure the segregation of liquid chemical waste at source and ensure the pre-treatment and neutralization. So if you have any of the chemical waste, okay, so depending upon what kind of a chemical waste it is, if it's an acidic or the highly acidic, you need to neutralize it. Different kind of waste are generated. The SDS mentions that how it has to be neutralized. What is an SDS? Previously called as MSDS, the material data sheet, now termed as SDS. These mention how the particular chemical will be neutralized. So you need to have the neutralization facility for it as well. You need to provide the personal protective equipment to your healthcare workers. You need to report major accidents. You need to have the annual report, which should be presented on the website. Now, inform the prescribed authorities immediately if the waste is not picked up or retained for more than 48 hours. You remember I told you all that you can store it only for up to 48 hours. So in case if the common biomedical waste treatment facility people are not coming and not picking up your waste, you need to inform the prescribed authorities that the waste has not been taken. There would be conditions wherein either some kind of an issue would take place, but in that case, if there is a delay, then the common biomedical waste treatment facility people mention it across to you in a form of a notification that there would be a delay. In such cases, you need to store it in a much more appropriate and safe and secured manner, so that it is not the infection or the material is not spread into the common environment. You need to have a committee to review at least once in 6 months. This is for laboratories, and record the minutes of the meeting of this committee and incorporate it in your annual report. So in this committee, what are you going to discuss? You're going to discuss what are the kind of the biomedical waste which are being generated, how these biomedical waste are being stored and segregated, how they are being managed, who's responsible, what are the kind of trainings that have taken place, the vaccination of your employees, what is the current status, has there been any accidents, and if there has been accident or incident, who has attended to and how it has been attended to, and how do you identify that if there is any risk of such accidents taking place, how are you mitigating it or how you're reducing it. You need to maintain all the records for the period of 5 years. You need to conduct checkup at the time of induction and at least once a year for all your healthcare workers. This is now mandatory for all organizations that they need to have an annual health checkup for their staff. And you need to maintain daily register and upload monthly reports on the website. Daily register, we are talking about segregation of the biomedical waste. So you need to have that how much waste has been uh, 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 received on that particular date from the different departments, weigh it and mention it into the different categories, yellow, red, blue, and into the punch-proof containers, and what has been the total weight. Okay, and all these monthly records need to be uploaded on the website. So the responsibilities of the occupier, in short, is handle and segregate, storage, disposal, the non-chlorinated bags, pre-treatment at the site. You need to have registers to maintain. You need to have a health checkup of all your employees. You need to have immunization of the employees. You need to have training of your employees. You need to have the monthly report and the annual report. Monthly report has to be uploaded on the site and the annual report at the end of the year. And you need to have a committee which conducts its meetings at least once in 6 months. So at least twice in a year. That is the minimum. The more the merrier. Okay, because that helps you with improving your biomedical waste facility uh, generation as well as reducing its effect on the environment. Now that you can prepare your new requirements, like how do you work out on it. So in a committee you decide like how you're going to do. So you present it as an agenda. You can have what are the new requirements in the organization. You can have your timeline for implementation. So whether it's a timeline, who's responsible for it, and how the person has to submit the details to the committee. So you can have, like, for example, mentioning the pre-treatment of the laboratory waste, microbiology or blood samples are given for disposal. What is the implementation timeline and who's responsible for it. So this way you can have some kind of timelines which are prepared once you have a committee meet. So this is in short about how biomedical waste needs to be done, needs to be generated, needs to be stored. Okay, so